If I don't try, I will never know. And so I didn't like having that unknown. I wanted to answer that unknown factor. I wanted to, make that question mark an answer. Meaning that our fear is telling you to go for it. So that's how I like shifted a little bit the way I think about fear.
I feel like the economy has taught us that there is no promise in any degree
Yeah,
or any
that's
industry,
right.
right? There is no guarantee for a happy life, right? Or a sustainable life. But the
Yeah.
beauty about life is that as we transform and we have these different reflections, we start to realize that life doesn't have to be any one thing.
It was just the realization that I am capable of doing whatever I want to do if I put my mind into it.
Now as an adult, I hope people realize how narrowing that view is, right? It's so limiting. Welcome to this episode of How Do You Divine, where we define the words that drive our lives one word at a time. And today we are here with Urmi Hassan to explore how she has come to define the word transformative. Urmi, thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. I was so happy when you reached out and wanted to be a part of the podcast and really share your journey with our audience. We're going to talk about how you define transformative throughout your journey. But as an author and fellow podcaster, as well as a corporate girl, I just wanted to start with how has your journey to transform? When did it become a moment for you where you said, I can do more? I can be more than a corporate girl. I can be more than an author. And what drew you to create in these various spaces?
Yes, I would say it probably happened about 5 to 6 years ago when I had a little bit of time in my hands and I was like, I want to do all of these things, but I don't know where to start. And so it all started by taking literally little steps, baby steps. And little by little, I started to follow my passion. I started to follow my curiosity, my intuition, and I started to do little things. And that's how I was literally planting my seeds. And what happened is I started to do all these different things, such as, creating a blog, doing interviews on YouTube, being on podcast shows, creating my own book. And then what happened is now that 6 years have passed or 5 years have passed, when I look back at it, I'm like, damn, there's been so much transformation in me. Like I can see my older self and the person that I am right now and compare them, and I can see there was an evolution in me. Like I became much more confident. I was able to build my own personal brand. I can also see that people perceive me in a different manner as well. Like people come up to me and they're like, oh, we really like this version of yourself. Like we see a much a much more knowledgeable person, a much more confident person. And that's how I realized how much I have transformed myself. And I didn't think about it, but when I look back and I see how far I've come, formation.
Yes. And how did it feel during those times, right? As someone who exists in corporate spaces myself, was there any fear when you started to transform and kind of open up yourself a little bit more into your creativity?
Yes, there was a lot of fear of failing, fear of judgment. And what happened is I was like, you know what, if I don't try, I will never know. And so I didn't like having that unknown. I wanted to answer that unknown factor. I wanted to, make that question mark an answer. So I was like, I'm still gonna go with it. And let me tell you this, it's hard. At the beginning, it's hard. Like when you are being yourself, being vulnerable in
Yes.
front of people, especially through storytelling, writing books, telling your stories through a podcast, you always feel it's challenging because you're showing a different side of yourself to the world, and you're also showing yourself out there to the world, to
Yeah.
people that do not know you. But then I realized how much I was able to impact people, because people would come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, I also went through the same stories. I also go through the same struggle. And a lot of people, like, let's say, for instance, when it comes to personal branding, people were like, how did you do it? And I went with
Yes,
it.
and you did it
And so,
afraid. I think I've talked about this on numerous podcasts that you have to proceed although you're afraid. Operate while afraid.
yes, yes. And there's this quotation that I have on my phone that says, they gave you fear to enter, seek the treasure, holds the treasure you seek.
Mm.
And so that's how I was like, I have to push myself. I also read the book about fear, and basically it was saying how much we are afraid of different things, but what sometimes we need to see fear as our friend. We have to see it as our ally. So every time we are afraid of something, we just have to see this as a positive thing. We need that our fear is telling you to go for it. So that's how I like shifted a little bit the way I think about fear. Every time I'm fearful, I always throw it.
Yes, I love that. So bring us back a little bit. Tell me about your upbringing, where you originally from, to give the audience like a full spectrum of all of my guests, because I think often in these conversations about elevation and success and pursuing your dreams and goals, there is this pretense that you need to have come from wealth or have opportunities that you're like, you know what I mean? I always feel like it's a range, right? It's either we are fortunate enough to be birthed into circumstances that give us these predetermined privileges and access to certain resources, right? Or there is the other story where, you get it out the mud, essentially. You have absolutely nothing. But there's something in the middle, right? There's a range of who we are and where we come from. So give us a little of where you're originally from. Give us some of those early days.
Yes, so I am born and raised in Italy. I'm Italian by birth and Bengali by blood. So basically, my parents are from Bangladesh. So I have lived most of my life in Italy. I lived in different parts of Italy. I was born in Sicily, moved to the north, went to UK for a year, came back to Milan, and then I came to Montreal. And my family moved to Italy from Bangladesh right after they got married. So they are basically like a typical immigrant family who moves to a different country for a better future, better opportunities. And I come from a very modest family. Like my parents were not entrepreneurs or business owners or anything of that sort. And I would say that as someone who has parents who are immigrants, they really put a lot of pressure on their kids. Like they just wanted their kids to basically build a better future, get a good education, and so forth. And of course, they always inspired me to have a good job and, live well, live comfortably. But no one ever told me about these other things that I do right now in my
Yeah.
life, like writing a book, having a podcast, and so forth. These are things that I have done out of my own curiosity. And honestly, this is another thing about the culture that I come from, the South Asian culture, is that we don't really celebrate people being creative or being artists because, there is this stigma behind that it's not a stable job. Why would you do that? But I honestly, like, I do have a passion for my job, for the day-to-day job that I do, which is in finance. So in that sense, I would say my parents were like lucky, but I don't think it would have been okay if I was just strictly a business owner or an entrepreneur, because it's just not seen as a positive thing. And in the South Asian culture, there are only three career paths, whether you can be an engineer, a doctor, or
A lawyer.
a lawyer.
It's
A
so
lawyer, there
funny
you
you're
go.
saying that, and
Yes,
I'm laughing and smiling inside because it's very similar to the Caribbean culture, right? And that's why I said that. But it's part of
crazy.
why I love this podcast, honestly, is because it just shows us that we come from different regions across the world, and all of our parents who migrated from one country to another all kind of have the same predetermined notion of what success is, right? I have friends that are from Africa, all over the continent, and their parents who migrated either to the States or to Canada or to Europe, they too they've preached that sense of success is you must be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right? And it makes me
Perfect.
laugh sometimes because it makes me wonder what movie did they all watch that was translated across all languages? Because they all
Right?
got the
That's
memo, they
it.
all bought into it, and they all loved it. But I think you make an amazing point about the fact that being a creative or a creator is not seen as a fruitful career, mainly because of the sustainability aspect and the pursuit of constantly like selling yourself and winning opportunities and things like
Hmm.
that, right? So this reminds me of conversations I have with like my grandparents and my parents where I look at it from a lens of love and understanding, right? Because they want their
Yeah.
children to have stability,
Yeah.
and they want them to be stable and safe. So that's where that comes from. Just understanding that the underbelly of the hey, 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 don't be a creative, don't be an entrepreneur, don't do that comes from the place of I want you to have a stable lifestyle. And from what I know, in order to have those things, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
Yeah.
Stick to a company and you'll have that life. But I feel like the economy has taught us that there is no promise in any degree
Yeah.
or any
That's
industry,
right.
right? There is no guarantee for a happy life, right? Or a sustainable life. Migrating to any country and I need to buy this dream, I need to pursue this goal, which is to do as my parents said in order to ensure that I have a happy and fruitful life. But the
Yeah.
beauty about life is that as we transform and we have these different reflections, we start to realize that life doesn't have to be any one thing.
I agree with you. I agree with you, and I find it interesting. This whole definition of success it's pretty much the same no matter where you go. And I also think that the problem is that for the society, success is usually attributed to this one thing. You know, you have a successful career, whether it is in one of those three paths that you have mentioned. Sometimes it's associated with having a nice car, a nice house, having a family and things like that. But they never make you think otherwise, And I feel like I had to really undefine the traditional definition of success to define it myself, because we also associate success with also how much money you have. We think that, oh, if you're like crazy rich, you are a successful person, but sometimes even the richest person are very unhappy. And for me, success was more about doing the things that I love and pursuing my passions, even though they might not be always associated with money, because I also realized that, sometimes money does not buy happiness, does not make you always happy. And I think it's important to find your own definition of success. Because everyone tends to follow the standard definition of
The one we were
success,
all
but I
told.
think it's very, yeah, yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. When would you say transformative moment where you said, I'm still going to pursue finance. I'm going to stay in corporate to satisfy that fear, right? About being unable to sustain my lifestyle, but I'm going to open up myself a little bit more. When did you have that transformative moment in your journey? Was it earlier on?
No, it was in my late 20s, so I feel like I'm pretty late in this game. Um, I was literally was in my late 20s. So when I would say 27, 28, that's when I started to realize about my own definition of success and how I wanted to change that from what was accepted in the society, meaning that I was up until a certain point following what the traditional definition of success was, like you finish school and you start working and so forth. And let me tell you this, like, don't get me wrong, I do like what I do, and I do like the fact that I am in a corporate job doing finance and stuff like that. That's also my definition of success, which could be accepted by the society, but that's also my definition of success, being able to be a woman in finance, which is, I would say, my biggest accomplishment, being able to be in finance, being in a male dominated industry, and also pursuing these several designation in the financial industry. But at the same time, I was like, I think there's much more than your 9 to 5 job. And that's how I was like, I need to work on my 5 to 9 time to develop myself and to find that own definition of success. So for me, it really happened when I was like,
And how did you lean into that? Because how, was the book before or after that transformative moment?
it all happened after. Everything happened after. And I think the starting point was when I was talking to another girl who also used to work in finance, but then she launched her own business. And then I was like opening up myself to her, and I was like, I want to do all these different things. And she was like, I think you have something to offer. So jump on the opportunity, go for it. And so I did an interview with her on her YouTube channel. And then after that, I was like, I kind of like that. I said, I really like that. I want to see where that
Yes.
goes. And then she just told me, like, start from something that you very much enjoy. Because she was like, I think you have a, a baggage of knowledge. And I think it's time that you share those information to people because people can benefit from you. So then I created a blog, and then I started to have a YouTube channel. Then I had my first book, things.
Nice. I love that. So tell us more about your YouTube channel. What was your YouTube channel name? Because I want everyone to stay along with the journey. So you started with the interview on her platform and then you created your own platform. What did you name it? What was the purpose behind that platform?
Yeah, so I called it simply my name. I made it very easy, Urmi Hossein, because I realized that I don't need to sell anything. I am the
Ah,
product. I'm the product, I'm the service. That's how I saw it. And so I just called it Urmi Hossein. And basically, I talk about different things. Like I talk about typically I talk about my passions, like my passion for public speaking, my passion for language learning. I provide tips and tricks to people so they can learn from it, from my own experiences. I have interviews type of content with people where I talk about, again, public speaking. How can we become a better speaker? I also talk about finance, but I talk more about career in finance and how you can basically talk about the CFA, which is a program in the financial industry. It's this designation that you complete, and it stands for Chartered Financial Analyst. So I talk about like what are the ways that you can succeed and pass the exam. So I basically provide tips,
yes.
and everything is shared from my own experiences. So that's how this is why I called it Urmi Hostile, because I'm the product. I'm the one who's like, providing you ideas. And I've been having that for the past 3 years, I would.
So tell me, what led to the book? Because your book titled Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth of Interracial Struggle. Tell me, what was the most transformative realization while writing a book? While saying,
So when I first wrote the book, I was inspired by another author who was basically talking about her life. But as I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like she's talking about my life. And so she told me how she wrote it, she self published it, and I was like, I think I can do this too. But I didn't think it was happening at that moment. We're talking about 2022. And so what happened is I started to write it, and every day I would sit down, write like a chapter, or I would do like 30 minutes an hour, but I was very consistent and I was very disciplined in that. And then what happened is, as I completed it and I self published it, I was like, I did it. And so for me, it was that realization that I did it. I actually did it, because I feel like it's everyone's dream to write a book, but a lot of people don't make it concrete. But for me, when I do something, I'm a go-getter, so I like to like make it happen. And so the fact that I have done it, it was just the realization that I am capable of doing whatever I want to do if I put my mind into it. And so it was just a mindset work. I really had to work on I would say, on the way I think, and had to wire my mind to think that I can do it. And so I finally managed to do it. I am very proud of it, meaning that I feel like not many people can say, "Oh, I'm a self-published author." So for me, you
I
know what I
wrote a
mean?
book
Yeah.
and it's about your
Yeah.
experiences. So while writing that book, did you have any aha moments about your journey as an immigrant, living in Italy and then moving to Montreal? What do you think were some key moments that made you go, there's more to life than what I thought it was?
It was it was interesting to write about my childhood and my teenagehood because basically I'm talking about my life in Italy and how it was to be a third culture kid, like how it was for me to grow up in between two cultures, the Bengali culture and the Italian culture. And I'm sharing my childhood and teenagehood episodes that happened in my life. And it was interesting to see how everything was so vivid in my memories. Like it was just like, it felt like it just happened yesterday. So I remember everything and it felt very therapeutic in a way. I feel like I was able to heal a little bit about myself. I feel like, if I want to go back to something, I can go back to this book. It's sort of like digital type of
Yeah.
journaling. That's how I like to see it because I'm talking about my life and I feel like I can see a trend in the book because I talk about my life as I was a kid until I moved to Montreal. And when I moved to Montreal, I feel like there was this whole transformation of me becoming a much more confident woman and so forth. And even there, I can see this shift, evolutionary shift in myself. So for me, it was very therapeutic. It was very I want to say I was very present in the moment as I was writing it. I was present. I feel like all the memories were coming back about it.
Was
Yeah.
there a large Bangladesh community in Italy?
So y- yes and no, meaning that when my dad
Mm-hmm.
moved, he always says he was one of the first one, and I do think he was one of the first one because he moved in the 90s, and he didn't know anyone. He had no connection. There were no Bengali people. He had to learn the language. He had to learn a lot of things, and I was born afterwards. So he always says you're the first Bengali girl to be born in Italy. I was like, okay, fine, I'll take that. And I think it's true because there is no one older than me in the community that I know. And then what happened is he was the first one who moved, and little by little, other people started to come. So he brought his brother, then other people came in, and so in Sicily, the first I would say community was created, and then they all spread. So they went to Rome, they went to Milan, they went to other parts of Italy. And what happened is in around 2010, a lot of people moved to UK. So the community that was built in Italy moved to UK, but then new immigrants from Bangladesh came in. So now there is a big community of Bengali people. They all moved to Italy for some reasons. I don't know why. Yeah.
Nice. And how was that? Learning a new language? Think it's such a undervalued skill for any child or human being to live within two worlds, as I call it, right? You have the world that's in your home, and then it's the world that is outside your door. But as an individual, you're able to transition very seamlessly for school, for your career, for friendships. So,
Yeah.
how was that being from Bangladesh in Italy, learning Italian? How was that in your younger years?
So for me, there is only so much that I remember because I learned Italian since I went to school, like I was born in Italy, so I went to school to Italy. So there isn't much that I would remember, but I can tell you this one thing about my childhood was that at home we used to speak Bengali. But we used to speak Bengali until a certain moment because then I brought Italian at home. And so as soon as I learned how to speak Italian, I was just talking in Italian with my sister. So at home we were speaking two languages, Italian and Bengali. So it was me with my sister in Italian, and then sometimes I would speak Italian, like I would throw some Italian words with my parents when I would speak with my parents, and my parents taught me how to speak Bengali. However, I do regret that I do not know how to write or read in Bengali because like I feel like I'm missing something there.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a void because I can't complete like I can't say that I know. I only know how to speak it, and then there are other languages that I know like Italian, French, English, which I know how to read and write and everything, but I do not know how to read and write in my parents' language, which is something that I do regret in a
Yeah.
way. I just know how to speak.
Now take us from going to school in Italy, speaking Bengali at home, and then you move to Montreal, Canada.
Yeah, that was quite an adventure, I have to say. Um, because basically in Italy, I only saw Italian
Hmm.
people. I just saw Italian people. I did not see a lot of immigrants, even people from other countries. And then when I moved to Montreal, I see all these people with like different like ethnicity, and it was so, I don't know. I felt like I was Alice in Wonderland because everything was new to me. It was literally new to me. And then when I started to go to university, I had all these friends from different parts of the world, which I did not have in Italy. Like in Italy, I only had Italian friends, strictly Italian friends. I only knew that world. Whereas in Montreal, I feel like I was exposed to people from India, from China, from South Korea, Africa, other parts of Europe. So for me, it was a learning opportunity because I feel like I'm getting exposed to these other countries that exist in the world that I didn't know too much about. And so it was beautiful because I also felt like I was able to connect with a lot of these people, especially because they also had multiple like backgrounds, multiple cultural backgrounds, you know. So I feel like I was able to connect better. I feel like people were understanding each other better, whereas in Italy it was different. You know, I just had one.
It's funny you say that because it reminds me why I love New York so much, right? So I was raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I tell people all the time when I hear people say things like, "Oh, I've never met someone from China or I've never met someone from Japan or India and stuff like that." It's so it's very odd. I can't resonate with it because I was raised in Brooklyn, New York, where New York is truly a melting pot. One of my first
Mm-hmm.
friends was from Italy. Her name was Jenny. You know what I mean? I'm talking elementary school friends. Like in elementary school, we celebrated every holiday from Hanukkah to Chinese New Year to Rom Kippur to Muslim, like every single holiday. And this is in elementary school. So that's the only thing I know is to be surrounded by people with different ethnicities, colors, hair types, personalities, languages. That's all I know. So when I hear people from different regions of the world, that's like, well, I've never seen a black person, or I have no idea about Asian culture or African culture. I'm interested. Like, I'm interested in your lens
Same.
because I don't, it just seems so odd to me. And very, while obviously it's no one's like, no one made it that way. Now, as an adult, I hope people realize how narrowing that view is, right? It's so limiting to only be surrounded by your ethnicity or your culture versus being immersed in all of the different cultures around the world is so beautiful.
Yeah.
If I'm honest with you, it was most surprising to me in corporate. That was the first time for me I met people in real life that didn't know anything about a multicultural world was in corporate because again I was
It's
raised here in New York. So from elementary school all the way up to college, I was surrounded
yeah.
by everybody. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Swedish, Poland, like when I say everybody, everyone. There isn't a cuisine I haven't tried. There isn't a culture I haven't learned about through a friend or a friend's friend. So when I went into corporate and, certain spaces only have a specific group of people. And most often was like the only woman or especially the only black woman in the room. I wasn't intimidated at all. I actually found it quite interesting. I sat there like a sponge and was like, "Where are you from? Where are you from? Where did you come from? How did you get here?" And it made me realize that a lot of people come to New York for diversity.
It is very diverse. And I love New York. We spoke about this like the first time. I love New York because I really feel like you have a taste of everything. Everything that is there in the world, you have it in New York, and it's done really well. Like New York does really celebrate diversity, which is so beautiful. Because I went a couple of times to New York, and I feel like you never get disappointed, even when you are eating at different restaurants, trying different cuisines. I think we tried an Afghani restaurant, and I felt like it was very, very authentic, and I love that. I love how New York brings.
I agree. When my husband and I had children, we had to raise our children here in New York because living in New York forces you to have an open mind about everything. about people,
Yeah.
about topics, about politics, about anything. And it is not something that is conscious, right? Like everyone's not walking around like, oh, I'm a New Yorker and I'm open minded. But it is subconscious, whereas as New Yorkers, we leave our house every single day and we have no idea what we're gonna see. It might be crazy, it might be a little wild,
Yeah.
but we're open to the range of what this city has to offer. And something about that,
Yes.
I think, creates a foundation of humility and acceptance amongst people.
Yes, I agree. And that's another thing about New York, which makes it special. I agree with you. Like when you go out, you're not sure what you're gonna see. And I love how they have like different areas for like different
Yeah.
communities. And I think I watched this video. It was like literally from a couple of weeks ago about this Indian couple getting married, and this was happening in New York. And I think they were doing their celebration. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but they have one ceremony where they have to like enter
Yes.
dancing, and they were doing that, I think, near the financial district. And I was like, this is so incredible. And there's this other girl that I follow who is from India. She moved to study in New York, and she was saying how they were like teaching Bollywood classes, and or they were doing like a Bollywood class or something in her university. And I was like, this is what we should be doing. We should be celebrating diversity. And going back to your point about your own childhood, when I grew up, we were not celebrating, even at school, like we were not celebrating different festivity. Like I didn't know what the new lunar year was. I didn't know about all these different things. And I grew up in a country which was predominantly very Catholic. So I had a crucifix in my classroom. We just celebrated, Christmas, Easter,
That's
like
it.
typical
Mhm.
things that they do. Yeah, but for the Italian community living there, for them, the fact that I was different was a learning opportunity. They will always super curious about me because we celebrate Eid, we do Ramadan and stuff
Yes.
like that. So for them, it was a learning opportunity because they were like, oh my gosh, there is someone who's different from us. Let's get to know her. And and when I was going to school, I was the only one who was not looking like the rest. Like there were not that many immigrant people. I was the only one.
Yeah, I know, and that can be
Yeah.
really isolating. This reminds me of a story when, again, when I was in corporate, this woman I used to work with, her name was Victoria, and she was from Russia. And she migrated to New York from Russia with her husband, and her children were really small at the time. And they had what I would think is a regular, elementary school day show, right? Because that's in New York. Your children, they're going to go on school trips, they're going to have shows, it's going to be a full experience. I remember she went to the school and came into the office after the show. And she was a bit emotional. So I was like, Victoria, are you okay? What happened? Did it go well? Did your son do well? And she goes, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
She said that it was the celebration of us. And I don't know if they still do this, but the show, essentially, each child has to go up on stage and with your native flag.
I
And
love
you go
it.
up on stage and you say, I'm great because I am from Russia. And in Russia, we do X, Y, and Z. And then the next person comes up. I am great because I'm from Ghana. And in Ghana, and then they all come together and they sing a song about how beautiful our class is because we have the whole world in one space. And she was so emotional about it because she said, in Russia, there's nothing like this. There's no difference. There's no celebrating different cultures. There's not even celebrating if you look different. Right. And I remember saying to her, and again, for me, it was one of those transformative moments that showed me, like, wow, I do live a privileged life by growing up in New York. Like, I didn't, you don't realize these things
Yeah.
because you live here. Um, and I remember how moved she was by the ceremony. And she was like, have you ever heard of anything like this? I was like, yes, I did it multiple times. You have to do it in every grade. Because in New York, because people move so much and your zone school might not be your zone school, you might not have the same friends you had in first grade, in second grade, or third grade. So every year, it is something that we did. So she was so moved by it and was so surprised that this was something that was part of the normal New York culture to celebrate the differences of every single student in the room and celebrate the global holidays and every religion and practice that there was that existed in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah, as it should be. I agree. I agree with you. And well, this is one thing I noticed about Canada. Like, I don't know now how it works in school, but one thing that happens in the summer, especially in Montreal, which is so multicultural as well, is that they have festivals. So, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, it was the Italian festival, and then they have the Asian festival. So basically, they celebrate each community doing festivals, food festivals, or doing activities. And I realized that even Montreal is also very much like New York. Like there's so much diversity around the city, and people celebrate each community, and that's very beautiful because you are not forcing people to become like you. You're just celebrating where they come from, and you want them to celebrate that because then you get to learn a little bit about the other culture. So I also noticed that they do that in Montreal during like festivals in the summer, and it's very nice because you get to like taste the
Yes.
different foods, you get to see the different things they celebrate. It's very nice. Yeah.
And that is the beauty of a defined definition of being transformative, right? Because I think
Yes.
often we the perception is that in order to be transformed or transform into a different phase and season in your life, you need to leave behind who you are. You need to leave
Yeah.
behind your own religion, your own beliefs, your own culture. And that's not really what being amongst a transformative group of people is. It's not what it means to be transformative in your life, right? It means to
Mm-hmm.
evolve and add on different
Yes.
layers of who you are by surrounding yourself by different with different people. Open yourself up to new opportunities, right? Like many of
Yes.
our immigrant parents taught us, we were told that the only ways to success and happiness was lawyer, doctor,
Yes.
engineer. But we took
That's
those
it.
foundations and added a transformative layer to it. We opened ourselves up to what creativity and happiness can bring us, and we transformed it into the way we live now, which is not foregoing, right, what they've taught us, because they taught us only what they knew, but it's transforming that definition.
Yeah. And I also think we can't blame them at the same time, like they only knew that one
Yes.
thing and they taught us this one thing and they want us to carry forward with that. But I think it's about embracing the different aspect of life and transforming them. I think also going back to this whole, thing about diversity and celebrating diversity, some communities are not open to that. They just want to preserve their own culture, their own traditions. But I think it's about really embracing that, bringing a little bit from different worlds and creating another, merging them and creating a different fusion of it. And also, that's part of like transformation and evolution.
Yes, I agree. What's most important is people to understand that collaboration does not kill preservation. It actually amplifies
Mm-hmm.
preservation. It actually makes you preserve culture a little deeper and longer. So it's really, as we were talking about earlier, stepping into that fear and not trying to step away
Yes.
from it, because the fear is that if I open up my culture and I tell them about my traditions and I tell them about Bangladesh, they're going to judge it, they're going to try to change it, they're going to try to move it. What you don't realize is that's the fear that's holding us back, right? If I could have said that I'm coming
Yes.
on this podcast and I'm just going to be corporate Sanika, I'm not going to talk about my Jamaican roots, I'm not going to talk about being a mom, in my mind, to preserve the perception of what people have of me, right? To compartmentalize who I am. But all that is limiting people's opportunity to know who I am in my entirety.
Yes. I agree with you. And you showing up to the world like your truest self, you being honest to yourself. You don't want to like try to fit in, you don't want to play a role. You know, you don't want to perform a role because you think about this other person's perception of what they will think, because then you're lying to yourself, you know. And I think if you really stand for yourself, you should be telling your story. You should be telling about your roots. You should be telling about the language that you speak, what you eat, how you do it. Because I used to be a little bit like that too, that I used to walk away and not share everything about my culture. So one thing I can give you a very simple example. Like in the Bengali culture, we eat out with our hands. We eat with our hands, and I remember one day one of my friends making a comment and saying, "Oh my gosh, did you see these people eat with their hands?" And so I never told her that we also do that. But now that I am much older, I think about it and be like, why did I not tell her this? I want her to be educated about this. And then guess what? Other cultures too eat with their hands. It's not just
Yes.
us, like you have to be open about it. So now I try to not shy away from it. I try not to walk away from it, because I want to be honest about my identity, about myself, about my tradition, my culture, and I don't want to lie about it to other people because I'm worried about what they will think. I'm not responsible about people's opinions.
Amen. You definitely are not. And also understanding that in order for us to want a more unified community, right, amongst the world, across the globe, we have to be willing to transform how we think today for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because it's so limiting for you to feel like, oh, because someone eats with their hands, oh, that is so atrocious. You don't even know how far that culture and that lineage come from. And instead of you being more
Yeah.
curious, right? And the beauty of this conversation is encouraging people to lean into their fears about being transformed in how you see people and how you see your life and what it means to have a transformative moment and find those transformative moments in your everyday life. If if you're
Yes.
Spanish and all you do is eat Spanish food, I'm going to ask you tomorrow to go find an African place to eat. Find a Caribbean place to eat. Open yourself up to different cultures because preservation comes with collaboration. It is the only way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I also think there is self transformation, but there is also transforming other people, which is a little bit what you said, like when you tell this other friend, oh, go and try this other thing, you're also transforming another person. You're also helping the other person to untapping new potentials and learning about different things and discovering different things, because otherwise we're all going to be in our bubble, and I always say you have to be comfortable with uncomfortable. That's also part of the transformation.
Yes, you definitely do. And not leaning away from it because often we are so comfortable in our own culture, in our own spaces, in our own family, in our own, the predictability of it all, right? So we don't,
Yeah.
no one wants
Yes.
to be rejected or feel like, I don't know how to eat this food. I don't know how to use chopsticks. I don't know how, like, you understand what I mean? But it's giving yourself grace and understanding that everyone doesn't know. Girl, at one point we all are sitting there trying
Yes.
to figure out how to use these chopsticks. At some point we're all trying to get the
Yes.
fufu and put it like it's such an amazing experience to me to be a child in these situations.
I do. I agree with you. Yes. Lovely. Yeah.
Listen, Urmi, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and joining me on this conversation. And I would love for the audience to just stay connected with you. So tell us more about your podcast and where we can find you.
So my past podcast is called Stories Beyond Borders podcast. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and there's also an Instagram page. And if the people want to connect with me in other platforms, I have a LinkedIn profile called Urmi Hossain, my YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain, and if people want to get my book, it's available on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this conversation. And this is How Do You Define Transformative?